Right then, all the parts that we've been building up over the last few stages have now been airbrushed in the Tamiya Sasebo Grey, and I'm just in the process of putting those additional colours on where they're needed. So we've got the navigation lights, for example, and we've got the chrome insides of the search lamps there, and then what I'm doing in these areas that that really wouldn't exist but are solid plastic where there should be gaps, I'm just going through them and painting them in dark grey. Now everyone does this slightly differently, but you need to make the parts stand out and show up as being different. So I've gone with German grey, to be honest. Painted those in German grey. So that's basically what we're doing now, and then we're going to assemble all the parts as we go and see how we get on. So my next job is just to unmask the glazed area, and then we've got a little bit of wash to put into various little grills, and then we're ready to go. So let's unmask the glazed area now while you're on. And what I did is I used the blue tack as masking on the inside face. So we'll start by removing the masking tape, and hopefully we're not too bad. That seems to look okay. Right, we have all these sub-assemblies that we've been building up. They've been spray painted, they have been given all the different colours they need, and we're now in a position where we need to start building them into place. And that construction process is going to start with the funnels. So the funnel tucks in there and plops into place. And basically these openings sit on those openings there, and you can just see, if I show you, you can just see there's a couple of lips on those that go on the inside of the funnel to hold it in place. So we just need to put a little bit of glue down, which we're going to do now, and then we'll put the funnel in place first. So I'm just putting the glue actually on the top, knowing that it'll sort of get dragged in. I don't want any glue getting onto the deck. And then if we turn this over, we can put some glue on these, on the front forks of the funnels here. There we go. So, done several test fits of this, and we know that it fits okay. There we go. Nice and square. Okay, funnel in. So the next job, this little tower that sits on the front there. So that's our little radar array. And that just fits in here like so. And there's a little location pin that fits in that hole. So our glue points are this hole here and the bottom of these legs. And we just have to be careful not to get the glue anywhere we don't want it.
Right then, there's a little bit of work to be done once you've got these items fitted to the deck. So the inside of the searchlights has been painted in a chrome paint, as has the front faces of these smaller little searchlights, which you can see there. The main bit of painting is actually on this rear mast where the crane is, and you can see that we've painted a section of that in black, and then as you go further up the mast, there's a little white stripe needing to be added, which we've put in. So we need to now put the front faces on the searchlights, which I have painted up and are waiting to be attached. These windows here at the in the aft superstructure have been painted in a thinned gunmetal, which is what we've used for all the little windows across the build so far. Just need to do a little bit of touch up there. And we've also put in the anti-aircraft guns, which have been painted as per the instructions in gunmetal. Again, thinned slightly to make them look a little bit more realistic there. So yeah, happy with that. Oh, you can also see that I've added the etch ladder that's going to replace the plastic slab that Tanya put in. So we need to paint that up as well. Okay, let me take you through the kit step 22, which I've broken down to 3 steps: 45, 46 and 47. 45 is these catapults here, and they need a second coat of paint, and you saw those being fitted. They fitted into polycaps. Then 46 deals with a number of parts. So we've got, you can see here, we've got a little davit there that's been added. We've got the little rotating turntables there for the aircraft track. And you can see those 3 long strips there that have been put in place, and we've covered up the sort of the fastening holes and bits and pieces that were there. Now all of these pieces you could airbrush and then plop into place. They all just fit into place really nicely. So they're just sat there now. So we will paint them and then just glue them into place. And then in step 40, my step 47, it's the anti-aircraft gun. So the bases have gone in like we did on the superstructure. We also have a couple of davits to add, which you can see there mounted on the side there, and the kit supplied photo etch propeller guard has gone there. And then as we move down, there's these 2 photo etched struts that stick out, some form of boom. I'm not quite sure what they are for. Obviously something to do with the flight deck. And then the last thing we've got to add is the jackstaff at the end, which is quite a large piece of equipment, as you can see. So that needs to go on as well. So we're going to add that next. Okay, we have fitted all of these items now. So the crane, the little strips on the deck, the bases for the anti-aircraft guns, and these the jackstaff and various bits at the rear there. So all of them are in place, waiting to be painted, which means we can now move on to the next step, which is the main armament, and get them ready for paint. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so these are the parts for the 3 main guns, and they are all different. So the bodies of 2 of them are identical, but one of them has slightly different gun barrels, and this one has a rangefinder on the roof, which makes that different, but has the same gun barrels as the first one. So they're all different, so we can't afford to mix up the parts. So I will build one at a time.
let's put the first one together and see how that goes. Right then, the build process for these main guns is really quite easy. We start with the base plate there. Now, what Tamiya do is they put a couple of polycaps in, which means that you can put the guns in separately. The gun barrels can go in after the turret top has been built. But usually you're putting the guns in at this point and then trying to put the turret top on top. So it makes it much easier for painting the gun barrels. So it's a really nice idea at one level. What it does do, however, is it fixes those guns into position. So you can't have them in multiple positions. You can basically put them in that way around and have them facing forwards, or you can put them in that way around and have them sort of angled upwards a little bit. But yeah, you are a little bit limited. Right, so once you've got your polycaps on, we put the top piece, which has the front and back section, in, and there is two little, let me just show you, there's two little pips on the inside, and they just sit on top of the polycaps and stop them dropping out. So really handy, well thought through bit of engineering. I can now turn that upside down and not have to worry about polycaps dropping everywhere. So a little bit of liquid poly in the front seam. Now it looks like there's a gap at the back. Don't worry about that, because actually the part's sitting in at the two corners rather than along the full length. So that's your top section done. So you then got the two sides. They just plonk on top. So your cleanup is on the bottom edge. It was connected on the bottom edge. So that's nice and easy. You do end up, however, with a small gap just at the front, but it's tiny, and it's so tiny in fact that if you just push things together while the glue's wet, it will fill with a bit of molten plastic and it's gone. Okay, that's the next one in. Now they've moulded these parts so that they naturally end where joins would have been, so it's all good. There we have it, one gun turret. Now this is the one that has the rangefinder on, so just going to check that I get the orientation right. Yeah, I would have got it wrong, and the fit is okay. So let's glue that in. Okay. So I've cleaned the gun barrels up, but we're going to leave, actually I've not cleaned those ones up, I've cleaned these up. We're going to leave them on this little section of sprue for painting, because we're painting the barrels and the blast bags, and the rest of it can be left. So these parts are done, ready for painting, so we can move on. Right then, we're just building up this secondary armament, and I'm just going to take you through my process and build one. So we start with the stand, which has a little peg on, which is going to go into a polycap. Now there's not much in the way of cleanup on here, but there is a little bit. The most important bit is actually on the underside of this piece here. There's two pegs there, and there's quite a heavy seam between them, and if you don't clean that up, it will not sit on this base flat as it's supposed to, so keep your eye out for that. So I'm just putting it on a clamp as a way of using a stand, and we start with putting the body of the gun on the stand, like so. Then the gun barrels, they just fit in like that, and they flap around, but don't worry about that just yet. Then we have this top piece that we need to attach, surprisingly, on top. There's a little T shape that has to slot into a T-shaped hole, and I'm finding it a bit tricky. Once you've aligned it, it does click in. And because we messed around with it for a little while, I'm going to put a little bit more glue on that. Okay, which means that we can now adjust the gun to any height, and it does seem to hold its weight, so it's well engineered. Right, then we have the gun shield, and we have to glue the two sides to that. So you can simply put them in place and then run some glue on the inside. Okay, then there is a little recess. You can see a little rectangular recess underneath the opening for the gun barrels. That attaches onto that square on the front face of that. So again, we can put some glue on there and get that wet up front. There we go. I'm just going to put a bit more glue in, make sure that all the contact points are glued down. And then we have our gun. So I am going to make the other three, and then these are ready for paint also. Right then, we are slowly building up the various bits and pieces that need to be painted. The next thing that we are doing is the kit step 25, which is my my step 52, and we're at this section here. So we're doing anchor chains, the flagstaff there, and anchors and bits and pieces here at the front, which can all be added and then painted in. So we're starting with the anchor chains, and what we're doing is just dipping the end in some CA glue, and then the end is going to be dangled into the opening on the deck. Like so. And then the other end of the chain can just be fed into the hose pipe opening. If I can find the end of it. Once you've got the chain in, you can feed it in quite easily. Just keep feeding it down until it's nice and tight and looking right. Now I think this chain, in the instructions it says do not paint. I think this chain looks a bit shiny, so we will definitely matte coat it. Okay, so that's the chain in place. And what I'm going to do now is just put a small dab of glue just where the chain sits on the top there. Just to hold it in place. Right, I'll get the other one done and then I'll be back with you. So all the armament is held in with poly caps, so in theory we can just plop these in. Okay, secondary armament in. Right, now we need to make sure that we get the main guns in the right positions. We're going to start with this middle gun. I want to roughly at the same angle as those. There we go. So all the guns are going to be sort of firing at that angle. So we need to paint the blast bags before we put the barrels in, but that is all looking good. So with the secondary armament completed, we're next on to the ship's boats, and you can see here that we're making these up and then we're fitting them along with the davits to the side of the ship, and that completes the ship part of the build. We then move on to aircraft. So what I want to do is get these built up, and then we can paint everything that we've built, the primary armament, secondary armament, the ship's boats and the remaining fittings that go around them, and finish the ship off in short order. So I have already cleaned up all of the ship's boats. Now, one thing that's interesting is that this large boat that mounts on boat chocks that are moulded into the deck goes together like this. It's really nice, really crisp. And then this boat sits on top of it like this, which is a horrible, ugly, moulded lump of a mess. Tell me you're at its worst. But this sits on top of there like that. But you have the option of putting this on, which is a cover for this. But you can't, which I like, but you can't put that on top then. So, I'm wondering about maybe cutting the horrid lump off and sitting it on top, almost like the tarpaulin goes around it. I don't know. I might put one on one of them and not on the other, because this is going to be painted inside and have a little bit of interest, which will be quite important on the largely grey ship. So, don't know fully. We will paint one separately. These two also have covers. We'll paint those separately. These have injector pin marks inside, so what I've done is I've scored the decking in, like we did with the other boat. It's still slightly visible, but not too bad. Right, so nice and easy with these. These clip in really easy. And actually, you almost don't need any glue, they clip in that well. But you can see the little motor detail inside. So these would have been the cruise one. These ones here would have been for officers and the like. Yeah, we're going to have to paint the windows and bits and pieces on that. It's quite intricate, that. Anyway, we've clipped that in. I'm just going to put a little bit of... Actually, I wonder if it's worth painting that separately. I think that's probably better. I nearly caught myself gluing that in, and we'll paint those separately. And I've just noticed there's an ejector pin mark on the inside. Just caught it in the light, so we need to take that out as well. It's a recessed one, so a little bit of Mr. Surfacer. Right, so those are going to get painted separately. These are going to have their tarpaulin covers on, so we can glue these together. They sit on top like that. So other than the bumpers around the edge, which will be white, and the deck, which will be desert sand, everything else is the Sasebo grey. So nice and easy to paint. We'll paint the grey on first and then just pick out the details. So that's our little boat done. I'm going to paint the covers separately, and it's worth noting that they're not the perfect rectangle, so they only fit in one way. If you try putting them in the other way, they just won't go, because it's wider at this end than at that end. But they look quite cool. I mean, they're not perfectly accurate, but they're not bad at all, really. Other than the horrid lump underneath them. So we can glue that in. Now the other boats, of which there is 3 of them, which come with the davits, they just need painting separately, as do the davits. Now, so that is everything made up, ready for paint. So our next job is to get some painting done. Right, so my first job is painting in these glass bags, and I'm using Vallejo's off-white. It's not quite as stark as a normal white, which is what I want. At the end of the day, these were canvas bags, so they wouldn't have been bright white, I wouldn't have thought, and certainly with a bit of use you might have found that they get a little bit grubby and they fade in the sun and so on, so off-white seems like a reasonable option. So there we have first two. Now there's various things that want painting white, and we look at the painting instructions, various different bits on the different boats, mainly the bump stops, and we've got these canvas covers as well. Right, I'm going to carry on with the white and I'll show you where we're up to in a minute. The instructions call for us to paint the decks in Tamiya's Desert Yellow XF59. The problem I'm having is the problem I always have with Tamiya paints when you come to brush paint them, and it is really annoying. If you see here, I'm putting the paint down and then I need to go over it where it's a little bit thin or whatever, and as I go over it, it collects the paint and lifts it off again because it dries too quickly and it gathers up and then it goes lumpy. They're horrendous paints to use for brush painting. You can just about get by with them for airbrush, I guess, but so I'm stopping using that and I'm going to change to the Vallejo Iraqi Sand, which is a similar colour. It's slightly lighter, but we're going to put a bit of a wash on these anyway, so I'm not as worried about it. And this will go down, I know it'll go down without any issues, so if I pick this other one up and there we go, I can go over that several times, no issues whatsoever. Okay, so how these basically work is they plug into a polycap, which has made the process of painting these nice and easy, but it does mean that you can't really mess around too much with its positioning. First one in. Second one in. Once you understand what you're doing, it's actually not a problem. First gun's on. Right, now gun number 2 has different barrels. So I'm guessing the angle's just slightly different because I can't actually see what the difference is. So all I'm doing, you can see that I painted them on the sprue. So all I need to do is nip off the connection point, and then I'm just using a file to quickly whip off the nub left from the sprue gate, which is much quicker than using a sanding stick, and I'm not bothered about what this looks like because it ain't going to be seen. Okay, so I'm going to turn this around so I can see it a little better. Yeah, so the angle of those guns is slightly higher, and I guess that's if you want them facing forward so they're not in contact with the forward turret. Okay, and the last set is the same as that, so you end up with a full spare turret and extra gun barrels. At the end we'll show you how many spares you get from this kit, because you get quite a few actually, which is nice. I think some of the sprues would be in their other Mogami kit that is the heavy cruiser version, and so therefore you've got some parts that aren't being used on this, so it's a nice way of building up your spare parts. There we go, that's looking cool. Okay, I'm just painting in the bits and pieces on the deck of these boats and doing some touch up right now. I find these handrests really helpful, keeping things steady. So I've not thinned the paint that we're using right now because I want to keep it nice and thick. I don't want it suddenly shooting off down the corking of the deck. So by not thinning it, I'm keeping a bit of control. Okay, happy with that. I'm going to get the other one out of the way and touch up the others, and then we're ready for putting them on the actual ship. So my little flotilla of ship's boats is nearly done. We have outstanding to put the little tarpaulin covers on the back of the larger boats, and then we've got to put paint the windows in the gunmetal that we're using throughout the build. Otherwise, these are pretty much ready to go on the ship. Right, we have painted in the windows using gunmetal. So we've now got these little tarpaulin covers to put on the back. They're wider at the cabin end than they are at the transom end. So we, yeah, okay. They have a little lip on the underside which goes inside of that little recess. So we're going to put the glue just on the inside there, so we're not risking anything oozing out. Try not to drop it. Okay, that's one on. There we go. Can't wait for my new light. I have a new light and we won't have these issues with poor light and shadow and that sort of stuff. A couple of days to wait till my birthday and then I've got it. Okay, that's the second one done. So these are looking okay now, other than the horrible mounting points that Tamiya have provided. Let's get the big ship and put these things on. Right, so let's start getting these ship's boats on. So I'm putting the glue on the mounting points for the boats, but the one facing away from us only. So if there is any glue that oozes, it is not seen. I haven't put too much glue on, I don't think. But there we go. Just make sure that's flat because we've got another boat to go on top of that one. And then this launch goes right on top there. Like so. That looks alright, doesn't it? Now the boat chocks here are left redundant. I'm guessing that's because the catapult's sort of swinging in that area. I don't know. They might have been left over from before she was converted, but there is no ship's boats that go on there. Okay, then we have ship's boat to go there. Now I'm going to have that one slung in, and these we're going to, on this side, we're going to have slung out. So let me put those on first. Now we sort of know what we're doing there. Maybe worth building these boats up before you put them on, possibly. But anyway, we are done now. So that adds a nice dash of colour to that area, which is good. Right, now then. So we're going to put this ship's boat on next. Okay, happy with the position of that. So we've then got the davits. Now, what happens with the davits, I'll just show you, is you have two little tabs and you cut the inside or outside one off depending on whether you want them slung in or slung out. So I have to find the ones that I've painted for slung in. These will need a bit of touch up on them. That's the first one in. Okay, clearly didn't pair them very well, did I? Next davit along. Oh dear, that one's broken. I'll have to come back to that in a sec. That's not good when it's a davit that's going to be taking the weight of a boat. Okay, right. Let's do that repair while we're good and going. So that'll be an imperfection in the plastic, probably when the plastic was injected into the mould. So I'm just going to put some liquid glue on the end there. Just checking the width. Yeah, that's okay. Right, we'll let that harden and we'll come round here and put these davits in on this side. See if we can get this in a position where we can both see it. Okay. So there's no davits for this one, so clearly not in use. But there is for this one here, which I think you're not going to see so well. So I'm being very careful now we've had one break to ensure that we don't do that again. So there is little holes in the ship's boats that don't at all line up to the davits, so what a waste of time that is. Right. So by slightly twisting the davit inwards, we can make them line up. So as you can see, we have a ship's boat hanging off a davit, but it's the only one. This davit kept breaking, it was not happy, so we've ended up putting leaving the davit swung out but having the ship's boat on the deck. Now I must say that this bit of the build has been a little bit frustrating. The davits don't line up with the ship, with the ship's boats, so really the davits want to be angled in a little bit and they're not, so they don't really work, and that doesn't look particularly right, but we'll go with it. Also, it leaves holes in your boats, so there should be something that you can either put a tarpaulin cover over it or something like that. But anyway, it's just an observation. Now, as far as Tamiya is concerned, that is pretty much the build of the ship done. With the ship's boats completed, that's their kit step 28 finished. And the only thing that is left is the aircraft. This is the Mogami ship, without our aircraft pretty much done. So we've got rigging, we've got flags left to go on, but we're going to move on to aircraft next.